Alright, guys, welcome. I'm Parry, and this is another episode of Quick Message Monday. Today, I want to talk about how to avoid beat block and how to find new inspiration whenever you're trying to figure out what you want to make for a beat slash instrumental. Let's start with how to avoid beat block. At least that's what I call it. That would be basically, instrumental beat version of writer's block, right? How to avoid that, I would say, is pace yourself. Sometimes you can get beat blocked by just making too many beats too fast. Sometimes you may need to pace yourself. Sometimes you may need to take a little bit of a break, step back from music a little bit. You know, there are times where I'll have a month where I'll make a bunch of beats and a bunch of instrumentals, and then the next month I'll make like half that, because usually that month I'm kind of slightly burnt out. I kind of just take a step back. I'll still make some here and there, but then I'll bounce back, and it's usually up and down for me. One month I'll make a bunch, the next month not so much, and then the month after that I'll make a bunch again. So it's kind of up and down for me. But in terms of if I ever do, like for me, I don't have a lot of troubles with beat block, just because if I do have it, it's fairly easy for me to get out of. And so, how do I find inspiration for beat block? If what type of beats I'm gonna make, or some other things that help keep things fresh. So let me get into that. So for one thing that I can do is just look up beats on YouTube. Obviously, there's a billion different videos within every genre and subgenre of instrumentals that people have put out there, and so that can be a super easy way of just getting inspiration. Oftentimes, I'll find a beat that I like, and I'm like, "Ooh, that's cool. I'll make something similar to that." And then I don't recreate it, but I make something similar with a similar vibe. That's an easy way to get out of it. Um, in order to keep things fresh, sometimes it can be good to maybe make a slightly different genre that you don't make a lot. If you make a lot of hip hop, maybe try a little R&B, or maybe try a little pop or something, just to get out of your comfort zone is always a good thing. Sometimes it can be good to try a different workflow. For example, it seems like most people, when they start a beat, usually start with the melodies, and that's not a problem, but it can be good to start from a couple different areas. For example, maybe start with the drums next time. Do all the drums and then mess with your melodies. Or maybe start with the bass, get your bass line locked down, get a nice groovy bass line, and then go from there. Um, it can be fairly beneficial to start in different places in order to keep things fresh. So I'll do that. I'll start all over the place. From one beat I might start with the melodies, another beat I'll start with the drums. It just kind of depends, especially depending on what genre of beat you're making. Maybe if you're making something that's more of a dance track, maybe you just get a few, kick and snares and claps in there just to get a rhythm. Then you go make the melodies or something. Another thing to keep things fresh, maybe use a new or a different plugin in your DAW that you haven't used in a while, or you want to buy like a cheap new one or something that can keep things fresh. If you have a little beat block, not really sure what beat to make, whatever, maybe you can just remake a song. You don't have to have a lot of inspiration for that. Just find a song where the instrumental is kind of interesting, like, oh, that's cool, and then listen to it and try to remake it as best you can. I think that's always just a good practice, just in general, for anyone to do, because what I find is there are a lot of different ways that you can key in MIDI, I guess you could say, that you might not do regularly making a beat. And remaking beats can kind of get you out of your comfort zone, get you out of your habits, and it can give you new tools to put in your arsenal. And I think it can help you be a better producer and beat maker. So I always recommend to occasionally remake some beats. So that's a good thing too. I already said take a short break. Sometimes, like for me, I always usually make my own melodies, just because I think it's a good skill to have, to know how to make melodies. But maybe if you're like me and you always make melodies, maybe you try using some loops. You know, find a melody, a loop that has a nice melody or something, or maybe pull a drum loop or something into your track. That can give you an easy start for a beat when you're not having a lot of inspiration. Maybe you can do something as simple as, in terms of finding inspiration, just pull up your phone and listen to some music. That's always the easy one, kind of an obvious one though. All in all, I think that kind of encapsulates my thoughts on how to avoid beat block, or how to find inspiration when you don't know what to do. If you guys have any comments or other thoughts, leave it in the comments below. If you like the video, give it a like, subscribe, all this stuff. Anyways, see ya.